Okay, we are live with another episode of the Remodelers on the Rise podcast. Todd, what do you think? You've known me for a number of years where you're like, wait, wasn't your business called Remodel Your Marketing? Now I've rebranded to Remodelers on the Rise. Would you say that's an upgrade?
I'd say it's an upgrade. It looks pretty good. I like the logo too.
Logo
Looking
looks
good.
sharp. And then coming from a designer and architect and a creative such as yourself, that means a lot.
Thank you.
Today I have a friend slash client slash industry expert with me. His name's Todd Hallett with TK Design. Todd, I think we may have connected originally. Maybe it was through the Home Builders Association. I may have met your wife Katie through that. And what I've done with Todd and his team over the last number of years is once a year, and it's coming up, by the way, in a couple weeks, is it not?
Oh, I know. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we'll be we'll
Looking
be
forward
talking.
to it as usual.
Yes, we'll be talking soon. But once a year, Todd and Katie and their entire team and myself, we do a full day strategic planning session, and we've done it probably for I guess 5, 6, 7 years. So I've gotten to know them through that. That's been a lot of fun, and your team continues to grow. How many team members are we up to these days?
So we're fluctuating a bit right now because it's the market's been a little strange, but we're
Yep,
we're at about 35. We
awesome.
were as high as 40, and as you know, I think Katie and I started the business out of our basement. So it was just her and I, and we were recently ranked. Just came out about a week ago. Out of all the design firms and architecture firms in the country, we're ranked 165. So
Okay.
we're the 165th largest architecture firm in the country.
Excellent. And
Yeah,
you may be 165th, but you're number one in my heart.
I know.
Um,
Well, I'm shooting for 164 next year, so
okay,
I'm excited
excellent.
about that.
So share what we're going to talk about today is Todd and his team. They're experts at design, experts from an architectural angle, from lean design, from just creating and designing beautiful spaces. So they work with a lot of home builders. They work with a lot of remodelers. And why I wanted to invite Todd on is I think there's a lot that remodelers can learn about continuing to think through best practices on the design, on the architecture side of things. What I've learned more and more in the last 5 or 6 years is the importance of upfront work when it comes to design and project development. Remodelers who are skipping over that, who are not getting into the details of the design, of the layout, of the selections. When we don't do that, it leads to a project that is clunkier, that is less efficient, that is less profitable. It leads to a not as strong of an experience for the client. And when we do the proper work up front, it leads to a much more enjoyable and smooth and on time and on budget project. So we're going to just kind of unpack some best practices related to design, related to using 3D imagery, and Todd's going to teach us about those things today. But why don't you tell a little bit more about kind of your background? There's this Muddy Shoes architect moniker that you have. Tell people a little bit about who you are.
I, I graduated from Lawrence Tech, and while I was at Lawrence Tech, I worked for a real high-end architect out of kind of the Detroit area, and he had been in business for about 40 years when I met him. So he was getting close to retirement, and he had about 4 or 5 people in his shop the whole time he was in business. And I was fortunate enough that I was the only person that he ever actually taught how to design.
Mm,
Everybody else was in the drafting end of things. So I started designing a lot of stuff. And by the time he retired and I left, I was designing about 25% of the drawings and things that were going out of that shop. So that was a massively huge experience, and I was really fortunate to have that. During that time, once he retired, I went in a totally different direction and went to work for a builder who was building production homes in the Detroit market, Ann Arbor area.
okay.
And we were building about when I started there, we were building maybe 150 homes a year, so it was pretty big production. And I started out as the design guy, and then my buddy, who was the purchasing agent, and I sat right next to him all day long. And he left, and I thought, God, his job looked really easy because
Mm,
he just sat there and talked to people all day. And so I told my boss, I could do that too if I get an assistant. And so I started doing a purchasing job, but I found out right away it's a hard job. In fact, it's not only hard, but it's like one of the most thankless jobs I've ever been in my entire
Mm.
life. Because here's the deal: your boss wants everything cheaper. The trades obviously want to make profit, and then the people in the field that are working with them need quality people. So it's a tough thing to
Tough
really
tension there.
tough to, yeah, it's tough to please
Yeah.
everybody. So I did the purchasing for a while, and then I got involved with the operations of the company, and we started to grow. We got up to about 200 homes a year. As I spent my time there, I worked there about 9 years. I eventually became the vice president of operations, and then I was the president of the company for the last couple of years before we sold the company in 2005.
Mm.
So what that gave me was a huge amount of experience on what goes on with the building company, what goes on in the field, how to produce drawings that will actually build well and build cost effectively. What's cool about being in a building industry or building company, from an architect's point of view, is that you get immediate feedback, right?
Mm.
So like right now in our firm, we're designing and we'll send drawings out, and we don't always get that immediate feedback. But if you're working with somebody and you got buddies that work there, they're going to tell you right away, hey,
Right.
this needs to be improved. Or they don't always tell you when it's good, but they'll tell you for sure if it's wrong.
Ah, yes,
So
of course.
yeah, so I learned a lot from that experience, a ton. And then in 2005, the owner sold the company. And when that happened, my wife and I, Katie, who was at the same company, we split off, and I kind of went back to my true love, which is architecture. And during that time, we started out, of course, in 2005, which wasn't the best of times, and it just got worse quickly.
Hmm.
And so we ended up figuring out that we had to uh, have some way to reach out to the rest of the nation and not just locally, because it was getting real bad in Detroit, as you remember.
Yep.
And so we ended up working with builders across the country. I made a connection with Scott Saddam, who Scott Saddam has been a writer for a professional builder for the last 20 years or so. And he's known as the number one lean building consultant in the country. So he was actually out of Northville, and I was in Howell at the time, and we started doing projects together, and then we joined our offices together. So the muddy shoes came from Scott, who's a bit of a character. I know you know him,
Hmm.
but he would always say, "You're the only architect that I know that has the kind of background of experience with the construction end of things." And so that's how I ended up getting the moniker Muddy Shoes Architect.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Very good. Um, and the way as I've met more architects over the years, that practical experience of understanding, okay, we're designing things not just to there's there's I use that word tension again. There's that
Hmm.
tension also between remodelers and architects.
Hmm.
Architects who, "Oh, we're just going to make this beautiful," and then the remodelers who are like, "This was not practical, this is out of budget," whatever the case is. You've been able to thread that, which I appreciate. So if I'm a remodeler and I'm wanting to improve my remodeling plans, the work that I'm doing in that, what do we look for? What should we be looking for in a set of really solid remodeling plans? What are your thoughts on that?
For us, and we've been doing this a while now, so, and we've made plenty of mistakes, and we've kind of learned from them. But for us, the most important thing is getting a solid measure and a solid understanding of what is going on with the house.
Mm.
That work that you're talking about up front that gets overlooked all the time, because it's hard work,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes it's winter time, and sometimes there's bushes in front of where you want to get to, and or the house is a mess. And I mean, and really, unless we're just doing like a little family room, if we're doing anything more than that, then we measure the entire house, because I like to get a record of what's there. Not only because it's good to know how different loads are affecting different places, but also I found out that through the design process, a lot of times the clients will add stuff, right? They'll say, "Oh, now that I'm thinking about it, I want to do something over here in the bedroom as well."
Mm. So to already
But
have that.
yeah, getting a good measure is huge. So what we've learned is that we've got a really thorough checklist that I'll have two people go out and they'll use this very, very thorough checklist, go room by room, have to check off ceiling heights and check off where the outlets are, all that kind of stuff. And then they videotape the entire place. So they measure, they take photographs, they videotape every single aspect of it. They bring ladders so they can, I don't have them get up on the roof, but I have them check where it starts and get the pitch of the roof, so we don't have troubles with the trusses later on down the road. And try to get just as much detail as we possibly can.
Up front.
There
Do
was
you want to click on the share your screen and maybe show an example of let me click on that for you if you want to click onto one of the plans just so people understand kind of how you approach it, what that starts to look like. Maybe
show
even
a
the
plan. Yeah.
sure.
So am I sharing the
Yep.
screen yet?
All good.
You can see mine. Okay.
Yep. All good.
And so let me see. This is a CD set, and this is a big house. It was a larger remodel. Let me see if I get this full
Yep.
screen.
Perfect.
But the first thing we do is make sure that we have our general notes, and the general notes are specific to the given location, whether it be county or city or state. But we make sure that our notes are we have a general notes, and then we'll adjust them for the specific areas. Then we'll have demolition plans. So I see tons of remodeling plans that do not have demolition plans. And what that does, a demolition plan allow you to do is to call out certain spaces so they know what's happening, right?
Mm,
For example, this will say remove existing pantry doors and a portion of existing walls and prep for new construction. So it's really clear, like, or if you're going to use windows over again, right?
mm,
It makes it really clear on where we're doing construction and where we're not doing construction. And I see a ton of plans that do not have that information on there, and to me that can be a little bit confusing.
got it.
So have a pretty clear demo plan. We'll even if there's demo on the second floor, we'll show that as well. And um, then we'll start to put in the structure. So this is the foundation plan. And what's critical about this in the new areas that we're building is that we'll show them, okay, where are the bearing points coming down? And clarify that for the structure. Again, that's something that we sometimes folks will uh, take renovation plans and they won't put structure in, and they'll have the lumber company do that. And when you're doing that, obviously you're always leaving some money on the table and not
Mm.
being as lean as you can be.
Time out. So tell us about that a little bit. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So lumber companies want to make sure that they get obviously enough lumber in your house when they go to ship it. But if they're designing the structure, which a lot of them do, they'll design your headers and say, okay, over here it needs two by 12s, or it might need some micro lambs. They're not necessarily trying to design it um, to be as lean as possible, right? They're
Mm,
they're going to design it. Um, they might not necessarily be trying to pump it up either, but they're not going to check it like someone would do like an engineer would do, or someone that is trying to keep lean in mind and try not to over engineer the house,
mm,
right? So, like, there's some areas in a house where over engineering is good. Um, Floor joist is a great example of that. You can meet code, but still have your floor be bouncy when the home's built, right? So in those areas will tend to over engineer because it meets the customer code, right? The customer
gotcha.
doesn't want it to bounce. But generally, most things like studs and headers and things like that, most of those when they meet code, they're far beyond. They're like 2.5 times failure. So there's no reason in most cases to design more than that, right? And that
Gotcha.
happens. That happens all the time.
Hmm.
Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
so that makes a lot of sense. I'm learning some new things. And if you're watching this live, feel free to type in a comment or a question that you might have. We'll grab that as we go. But I'm already seeing here, just looking into remodeling plans. So much I feel of good design and good architecture is just doing the hard work of getting into the details. And so
Mhm.
if I'm a remodeler watching this, and maybe I'm working with a designer on my team, maybe I have outside architects that I'm working with, for you to push for more detail, for you to give feedback, like Todd was even talking about earlier, to give feedback back so that the next time there's more details, to be listening to what your field team is saying about, hey, this is unclear, how do we do this, how do we do that, realizing that the upfront work, if it's clear, is going to reduce the amount of questions, reduce the amount of interruptions. It's going to actually probably be saving you time and money by being more upfront and clear with it. So you're showing what else as far as in a set of remodeling plans usually
S-
kind of jumps out at you.
So here's the floor plan. And with the floor plan, you just want to have clarity of dimensions. You don't want to it's over dimension it,
Mm,
and but we want to make sure that you have the critical dimensions that are there, the critical notes that pertain, and then here again, structure. So I'm gonna zoom in on some of this.
okay.
It's critical. A lot of times, you'll see in plans that they're not detailed enough, then they won't even show any structure at all. To me, it's critical to not only show the structure, but to have it all designed and to show where these are bearing walls up above,
Mm,
so we know how it's going to bear down. And then we show again all the point loads, so we know where those are going down. So that's critical to make sure you have a complete set of drawings. It's funny that you talked about getting input from the field. That's to me the most important source of knowledge is to talk to your framer and talk to the foundation
mm,
contractor and talk to the different folks. And I was mentioning Scott earlier. One of the programs that he'll do and we'll do together is to actually go to a builder's office, and maybe in Texas, right? And we'll pull all the trades in, and they'll have these questionnaires beforehand and a set of plans, and we'll interview them and talk to them about all the areas that can be improved. And you'd be shocked at how many things can be improved upon and how much waste can be reduced just
mm.
by having a clear set of plans.
Okay.
Another
So
example of that. Go ahead.
yes, go ahead. Give me one more example, and then I'm going to take things a different direction for a minute.
Yeah, you bet. A great example of that is to um, if you've got a room, a bedroom, let's say, that's 12 foot by 10 foot. Okay, then decent dimensions. But if that bedroom becomes 12'4", then, or let's say it's 12 by 12. If that bedroom becomes 12'4" by 12'4", then you've just spent a lot more money because now you're ripping drywall, you're doing extra drywall, you're doing the flooring. There's
Mm.
numerous things that won't align with that is creating waste in the field. So go ahead.
So I think that's where you're kind of going, where I was going next. This lean design, that's a good example of that. And even when you say that, all of a sudden you have an architect that's like, oh, they wanted a little bigger space. Are they thinking about the actual work it's going to take to be slicing and dicing it to take care of that little extra dimension? So when we think of lean design, that's kind of where I just wanted you to teach a little bit and share a few examples of that. If I'm a remodeler and I'm thinking about lean design, or if I'm working with an outside architect, what are some just tried and true or some examples that you're seeing in remodels these days in particular, that are good examples of being wise and having good lean design?
So in the case of here's let me define lean design to begin with.
Yeah.
It's basically anything that the customer will knowingly pay for, right? So they're not going to uh, willingly and knowingly pay for what they would consider to be waste. And waste comes in all kinds of forms. One of the biggest things about waste is process waste, where uh, maybe the carpenter, or the carpenter's not a good example. Maybe the lumber company has to run out 6 or 7 hot shots on your site instead of delivering it one time. There's waste in that, right?
Mm,
That waste can be reduced by proper drawings. Other waste that we look at is things like flooring waste and dimensional waste. Um, but lean design isn't about cheap design or small design or anything like that. It's not about stripping out the amenities. Like, oh hey, if we didn't have that metal roof on there, then we're going to save whatever it is,
hmm
$4,000. That's not necessarily lean. If you put the metal roof on there and the customer wanted shingles, then you are wasting. So lean. I always tell people we gotta. It's something that when people think of lean design, they think of value engineering, and value engineering is only one small component of lean design. There's so much more that goes into it, and part of that being marketability of the house and
mm,
comfort and aesthetics. If all those things don't align, then the house isn't designed lean,
gotcha.
and we don't. And so I have an opportunity to kind of speak about this throughout the country. And again, it always comes down to eliminating waste that the client would not pay for, would not
Mm.
willingly pay for.
Got it. Good. So next place I'm going to go to is one. I want you to pull up that process document and talk about how that has made an impact for you, because I think that's very applicable to remodelers who also have a similar kind of flow and process. And then after that, after we show that example, I'd love to kind of have you show the example of 3D imagery and talk about how that can be utilized more by remodelers.
Okay. So this is uh, m- the single largest thing that I can attribute to helping us to communicate our process and close sales, frankly,
Mm,
that we came up with. I was at the International Builder Show, and a friend of mine was speaking, and he showed a builder who had done this kind of roadmap idea of laying out and documenting process, and we started using it, and the clients absolutely love it, and you kind of gives you immediate credibility because you're not just kind of trying to talk them through what you
mm,
do. You're showing them what you do, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we do it in a PowerPoint setting, and so we'll talk to them about discovery meeting, their budget, review photos, and I'll show them kind of quick examples of everything.
interesting.
Thumbnail sketch. That's what to expect when we meet for the first time. Talk about the agreement. We're going to field measure. We're going to approve the design, and this is what your deliverable will be. It'll be a sketch, and it'll be the floor plans, and so you get to know exactly what it is. Then once that's complete, there's a payment point, and we're going into phase two, and then we start the construction drawings, which will transition you to a project manager, and then we'll the first thing we're going to do is put together a 3D model, and we'll have that 3D model reveal, so they can walk through that. Once that model is approved, then we'll go to construction docs. And then with the construction documents, we're going to have what we call a block out meeting, which is about a 2 hour meeting, go through every single by checklist. Most of
Mm,
everything that we do, Kyle, is done by checklist because I've got to have consistency if it's me doing it or dozen other people, right?
yep.
And then we do revisions and final approval and all the rest. So the point of this whole thing is just a documented process on the upfront sales process and of things helps a lot to give yourself credibility and give the client confidence
Mm.
from the
So
early
that when
go.
you showed me that example earlier, I wanted to make sure we pulled it up, because that whole just five powerful words of "this is how we work." If you are a remodeler trying to sell your design and development process, just trying to sell your company in general, if you don't have something written out like this is pretty right design. It's kind of clever and step by step. And I think we also if you don't, you need to create an R process document of some sort. I should be able to go to your website, click on our process, and it walks me through step by step of what to expect. And also, we don't necessarily want to have a long PowerPoint presentation, but if you're watching this, the video aspect of it, Todd, as you were cruising through it, to show the deliverable, to show the examples, is a very effective way of building confidence and know, like, and trust in what you do. So I love that. And then you showed during one of the phases there, you showed the 3D model reveal. If you can
Yeah.
pull that up on your screen and kind of give a little tour of that, and what program you're using and kind of how this gets created.
So we're using Revit. We not for everything, but for we're trying to switch to Revit for all of our renovations
Okay.
for a couple reasons. One, that you can walk through it, and I'm gonna get that going. So
Yep.
let's see.
Oh, even the water's moving in the background.
So one is that the client can really visualize this, and it makes a huge difference in terms of not only changes in your design process that you're doing, but changes in the field afterwards, right? How many times do you get a set of plans? They're not 3D, and then you're building it, and you're looking up and going, "Oh, well, maybe we should lift this header up or drop
Mm,
that down." This and that's all that does is create waste and delay in the field, right? So this has been a huge game changer for us. It's taken us years to get to this level of, being able to put a model in 3D and do our construction drawings in 3D. But it's so great because it allows the client to, and this is a pre-done video, but I can
yep.
walk through this at any pace that I want. This is just a deliverable that we give to the client at the end of the project so they can stay excited about it and they can show their friends and that kind of thing. But this is what it would look like as we're walking the client through their home,
Mm,
and it just the difference between doing a 2D, which we still do, or doing a 3D, and the understanding of the client is massive. Now with builders, someone that's doing it every day, I mean, it's not that big of a difference. Although it's still like I'll even see some of the stuff, and I've been drawing houses for a very long time, and I go, oh yeah, I'm glad I saw that, in 3D. So
hmm
it's really helpful for the clients.
So a lot of people are using, if they're not using Revit, I guess it's one of those things of continuing to push your design and architect partners, continue to push your own team to being able to show off more of what it's actually going to look like. There's two things you just shared. One was that process document, and the impact was we went from just talking to people really nodding their head and going, that makes sense. I see the step by step. And then, yes, it's taken a long time for you guys to get to this level of 3D, but it is enhancing the experience and building that know, like, and trust much stronger. Sometimes we've got to push our design team. We got to push the architects that we work with to move towards something like this, and maybe sell something that costs a little bit more because there's tremendous value in having this done up front.
Truly, and
Mm,
money that you spend on the architecture end, I think everybody knows this. Anybody that's in the business knows this. Is are pennies compared to finding errors and things that happen in the field later or
mm,
misunderstandings, right? So, yeah, it does cost a little more to do this, but we found it to be well worth it. Our clients have found it to be well worth it. Um, and and there's a number of different programs out there, Kyle. We use Revit. We're also exploring a program called Hierarch, and that's a new one in the we're exploring that pretty hard.
mm.
And then there's things like Soft Plan or Chief Architect,
Yep.
which personally we haven't had as much luck with, just because they're not able to the way they work in the construction drawing set isn't as comprehensive
Gotcha.
as what we found.
Gotcha. So several things that we've covered so far, and if you want to see more of Todd's examples and design, and reach out to him and his team, it's tkhomedesign.com, tkhomedesign.com. But what we've covered here, even so far, is just some best practices when it comes to how to be viewing and reviewing the remodeling plans, what to really be pushing as far as level of detail goes. That 3D image example is very, very, very cool. We talked about the process and really getting that out there. We talked a little bit about lean design as well. Another question I have as we kind of head around third, heading to home and wrap this up in the coming minutes. would be, as far as having a streamlined collaborative process, what makes for a good collaboration between the designer and architect and the remodeler? Like, what are some best practices you see there?
We like to, whenever possible, have the remodeler involved right from the beginning. It's really that's the way it works best.
Mm,
We tend to get both. We tend to get remodelers that I'm working with, and I'll just call a continuous client. They'll bring their clients in, and then we get maybe 40% of our clients that just come in, kind of they found us through the website and stuff. And
hmm
when that happens, I try to get them associated with a remodeler earlier than later, for sure before we go to construction drawings.
got it.
So if I don't have a remodeler kind of attached to the client when they come in, then the very first time that we get that design reveal, which is just in the concept phase of things. I can show you a quick example of that.
hmm
Let me see. Um, can you see my screen?
Yep, all good.
So we won't go any farther than this until that's when we stop and we say, okay, now it's time to talk to a remodeler. And here might be three that you can talk to. They usually ask for three. Um, and part of what we want to talk about is, yeah, does the remodeler feel like this is the best practice from their point of view?
Mm.
And then budget, and everybody knows you can't give a solid, absolute budget on just, like concept drawings, but we want to get in the ballpark. We want to make sure everybody's in the ballpark and on the same page. At
Wait,
the same time,
you're an architect who cares about talking about ballpark ranges
yeah,
before we get further down the line? That's a beautiful thing.
that's a big part of what we do. We really,
Yeah.
on new construction and in renovation, we've had way too many times where we'll get people coming in that are heartbroken that have spent 7 6 7 months in the process and
Mm,
$10,000, whatever the number is, and their house is $150,000 over budget, and they come to us to kind of help them try to fix the drawings. So we try to
mhm,
do that up front, as much as humanly possible. And then what's good about that interim point at the concepts is then they get to be introduced to a few remodelers and start to develop relationships and maybe select that remodeler. What we don't want is for the remodeler to do a bunch of work and have the person still going to the other guy to do a bunch of work and all the rest. So we
right.
try to make sure that doesn't happen.
Gotcha. And really get that kind of that triangle of the architect and the remodeler and the client, and working kind of early on and in harmony with each other.
Yep.
As you're kind of sharing examples, and I'm just thinking more, because this isn't a conversation that I have super often as far as how the architects and remodelers interact together. But it's similar in mindset. I think maybe there's a shift in some remodelers' mindset of going, boy, there's a lot of value in really finding a design and architect partner that I really gel with, and that I really approach with a lot of my projects. Because just like with your plumber, with your electrician, with your drywaller, with your framer, with your finish guys and gals, the knowledge and the relationship that you develop with each other, and going to an architect and having already, they know what kind of drawings and what kind of plans you want and the level of detail, and there's that good working relationship. There's a lot of value there,
Yeah,
kind of
and
streamlining it.
honestly, the architect or designer should be thinking of the remodeler as their client, the actual homeowner as the client, and the trades as their clients.
Mhm.
Because they honestly they're designing things to be used by the trades ultimately on the back end. That they're a huge part of this process, and a lot of times that gets overlooked.
Mm, that's a good point. Well, excellent. So I there's been plenty of value shared thus far. I want you to do two things as we kind of wrap up. One, what's something that comes to mind that is kind of related to the topics that we've been hitting on that you didn't get a chance to mention that you really wanted to? And then number two, how do the people reach out to you to find out more about you?
Okay. The second one's easier than the first one. I'm trying to
Okay.
think of it. The so I think we covered a lot of ground here. The only thing that we didn't talk about necessarily are whether to include renderings or not of the finished product.
Hmm.
And we'll do that sometimes. We will, and sometimes we won't. Sometimes a sketch will be enough, like an elevation sketch, and the plans themselves. And sometimes people will want to go further. And the rendering technology is getting so much stronger
Hmm.
that it just looks like a photo. So that's the only thing that we maybe didn't talk about. So that's something to consider as an add-on service to the clients. And then finally, we're at tkhomedesign.com, which is up there on the screen,
Yep.
and our number is 248-446-1960. And we're based out of South Lyon, Michigan, but we do work everywhere. We do work all over the country. With renovation, um, in order to do work, out of state, then we have to establish a measurement process. But beyond
Gotcha.
that, we can do everything. And we're getting this the one thing that the pandemic taught us is we're getting better and better, even me, at doing the video talks.
Excellent.
Okay,
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks. We'll get
I'm
some
looking forward
good
to it.
sort of strategic planning going. Which, by the way, Todd invests in that, right? Of there's not a lot of work other than strategic work happening that day. Keep that in mind, remodelers listening to this. When was the last time you kind of pause things? You're really thinking through the year ahead, making sure you're doing that. And you could see just if you were watching the video, the level of work and beauty and craftsmanship and design and architecture work is really, really solid. So especially as you're looking at projects that are transforming a space, people are consistently asking me, hey, do you have a good contact for design for architect side? Todd is somebody that I mention often, and that you guys should reach out to find out more. Todd, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And I
All
just
right,
want to say real quick that you've done a tremendous job working with us on the strategic end, and that we credit a lot of our advancements towards the work that you've done with us. So
love that. I
we
appreciate
appreciate it,
that.
and we're looking forward to get to it again.
That was like a warm hug to end the
I,
to end the
I know,
call.
I
Thank
know.
you.
All right,
All right,
see
Todd.
ya.
Talk
Have a
soon.
good one.